All right. So welcome everybody to our August chapter meeting. Glenn, I think I'm getting a little feedback from you. Could you mute?
Okay. Yes. Hold on.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to start our meeting with our speaker for the month. Today's speaker is Dr. Michael Martin. Dr. Martin is an associate clinical professor in UCSF's Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics. His medical research is focused on preventative medicine issues, such as the relationship of cholesterol levels to heart disease, the effects of passive smoking on heart disease, the cost of firearm industries, sunlight's aging effects on the skin. That should have been a part of your study. And the excessive use of antibiotics in animal agriculture. Dr. Martin teaches at UCSF, and for more than 30 years, he saw patients in the general medicine clinic at Zuckerberg San Francisco General Hospital. Dr. Martin is the immediate past president of Physicians for Social Responsibility, and he serves on the board of their San Francisco chapter. Dr. Martin is also the founder and president of Physicians Against Red Meat, a nonprofit dedicated to reducing red meat consumption for health and environmental reasons. So Dr. Martin, I think that's your more than enough qualifications there. I'd love to hear what you have to say tonight. Why don't you kick things off and take it away?
Great. Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to make this presentation to everyone. It's an important topic and one that's a very personal one for all of us, right? Our food has to do with our food. Let me share my screen here with you. Should be able to see my blue screen there, correct?
Yes.
Great. Let me start my presentation here. Okay, first slide there, right? Slicing through the debate. As Adam mentioned, my name is Michael Martin. I'm with the UCSF in Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics, and really very active in this group called Physicians for Social Responsibility, a nonprofit group based in Washington, D.C. PSR, as it's known, was founded in 1961. It addresses primarily climate change and the risk of nuclear war, two existential threats these days, right? Two very important issues to address. It won the Nobel Prize in 1985 for its work trying to prevent nuclear war. So it's a good organization, been around a long time, and does great work. Let me start out by a disclaimer of sorts. The disclaimer is, I'm just the messenger. I don't get any great pleasure of bringing to you a message about the harmful effects of something that we've all grown up with and most of us have enjoyed throughout much of our lives. Red meat. Red meat brings us a lot of good memories, a lot of pleasure, and I don't get any pleasure to bring this message that, hey, it's really not that good for you, and it's not that good for our planet. But it's a message that needs to be delivered, and as a physician, I have a responsibility to deliver messages like this. Okay, so my goal today is to influence your beliefs and your habits regarding red meat. Influence your beliefs. I want you to recognize that red meat's harmful. It's harmful to your health, and it's harmful to our planet's health. I want to influence your habits, your personal dietary habits, what you eat, what you purchase, your purchase habits, what you purchase when you go to the store, when you go out to a restaurant, and your persuasion habits. That is how you talk with other people about red meat and how you persuade them to move one way or the other to eating more or less red meat. You know, everyone on this call is an influencer and has an opportunity to influence others in a significant way. You can do that very easily by simple comments you make. Someone you're out with at a restaurant orders something, red meat dish, and you might say, hey, I really don't eat as much red meat as I used to. That slight little comment can influence them. So I want you to influence your habits regarding persuasion. And let me start off with some definitions. How would you define red meat? I want everyone to think. We won't have a pop quiz here, but think, how do you define red meat? You know, we have dark meat of chicken and white meat of chicken. We have pork being marketed as the new white meat. Is that red meat? Well, I'll give you a very simple way to remember what is red meat and what's not red meat. 4 legs. If it has 4 legs, it's red meat. Cows have 4 legs. Sheep, goats have 4 legs. Pigs have 4 legs. They're all red meat. Other things don't have 4 legs. These animals do not have four legs, so they're not red meat. And this animal doesn't have any legs, so it also is not red meat. And the next definition is processed red meat versus unprocessed red meat. You might have heard people talk about it's processed red meat or it's unprocessed red meat. Well, what does that mean? Processed red meats are any meat that's preserved by curing, salting, smoking, and adding chemicals and other ingredients to it. And a lot of ingredients are added, preservatives, primarily something called nitrates, which, as we'll find out later, are quite harmful to us. But anything that's added in terms of preserving the meats is classified as a preservative and makes it therefore processed red meat. So what kind of things are processed red meat? What are some examples? Unfortunately, it's a lot of the things we all love and that taste really good and that we've grown up with, including me: bacon, ham, sausage, salami, corned beef, seen here with the sidekick cabbage, and canned meats. These are all processed red meat. They've all had things added to them, preservatives and other things, salts, to make them quite different than what the original meat was when it came from the animal. Well, how about unprocessed red meat? It's only meat that's cooked or cut, ground, or mixed, nothing else. Okay, so those are some definitions. What is red meat and what's processed versus unprocessed red meat? I want to first talk about red meat and our health, and we'll get in later to red meat and our planet's health. And the first thing I want to look at is red meat and overall mortality. You know, you can have a drug, for instance, that reduces your risk of hypertension, but it also might increase overall mortality by increasing the risk of diabetes or cancer. So you can't just look at, well, what does this drug do for hypertension? You have to look at, well, overall mortality, is it better for us in the long run, all things considered, or is it worse for us? So the first thing we're going to look at is all-cause mortality with each serving per day of processed red meat. And the way we're going to do this is by using a research method called meta-analysis. Complex sounding name, but it's really quite simple. A meta-analysis is a study of studies. It puts a variety of studies together to come out with a summary. Here is the kind of figure we'll be working with here, and you can see on the left side, these lines, these are all different research studies, independent research studies published in a medical journal. And this meta-analysis brings them all together. And it brings them all together in a way that you use a point estimate for the results of each study. For instance, if you get the estimates like this, you can see that there's a reduced risk because they're all on the left side of this one line going up here. So all these studies would be showing a reduced risk. If, on the other hand, you had an increased risk from whatever you're studying, then all the results would be on this side. And if it was kind of scattered like this, the studies, some showing benefits, some showing risk, then you get a result like this, and they kind of all center around this one line. And you'll notice this diamond shape here at the middle. This is the summary. So we can see that for this group of studies, that summary averages them all out and shows that, yeah, it's still pretty much on the left side, showing a reduced risk. This study, it's on the right side. This one's right in the middle. So we'll look at that summary statistic a little bit in how we move forward here. So we're going to look at all-cause mortality with each serving per day of processed red meat. Let's break that down. First, all-cause mortality. Again, I'm putting it all together. How does this affect our overall mortality rather than looking at individual diseases? We'll get into those later. Each serving per day. So we're looking at one additional serving per day of red meat. It could be bacon at breakfast. It could be a ham sandwich at lunch. It could be some beef dish at dinner, but it's only one serving per day, and it's processed red meat is the first thing we're going to look at. Okay, so here's the first study. All-cause mortality of each serving of processed red meat. Each one serving per day. Now you can see all of these studies are consistently on the right side. So they're all showing an increased mortality with one additional serving per day of red meat. That's a very strong evidence when they're, again, all on the one side. And you can see the summary statistic is here very clearly on the left side. So it looks like one serving per day of red meat really increases our mortality pretty significantly. Now, this is just all-cause mortality with total meat, not just processed, but unprocessed too. Again, very consistent results. And here's just another couple studies that we looked at. These are two studies. This is the first one. This is called the Health Professions Follow-Up Study. Very large, very well done study over many, many years, where they take a lot of tests and analyze people, ask them questions, and then they follow them forward over time. So it's done over many, many years, and they see whether different factors affect health. And you can see that for this result, different servings per day, total as the total red meat intake increases, the risk increases very dramatically. And here's another study, again, a very large study. This is called the Nurse Health Professional Study. Looks at the same thing, one additional, two additional, three additional servings of red meat per day. You can see how closely those graphs are to each other. Very, very consistent results and very persuasive results in terms of the overall mortality increase of red meat and with each serving per day. Well, that's total mortality. Let's hone down a little bit and look at some other things like red meat and cancer mortality. Here's the cancer mortality meta-analysis we get. Again, you can see things are almost all on the right side. We got one little study there, barely on the left side, but the summary statistic very clearly on the right side. Red meat very clearly seems to increase our total cancer mortality. How about some specific forms of cancer? Colon cancer. You can see the vast majority of the studies on the right side very clearly showing red meat increases colon cancer mortality. Red meat and breast cancer. A little more, not quite as persuasive evidence here, but the summary statistic shows, yes, clearly on the right side. Summary, adding all these studies together, red meat seems to increase the risk of breast cancer mortality. And now let's look at some, other forms of cancer here. Right along the bottom, you see all the different kinds of cancer, many different kinds of cancer: breast, prostate, lung, colorectal, gastric, esophageal, pancreatic, all the really worrisome kinds of cancer that we think of. And if there's anything showing above this line here, this line of 1, then it indicates a risk, a higher risk. And we're looking at unprocessed red meat and processed red meat. So what do we find out? All of these cancers show an increased risk of occurrence with additional servings of red meat per day. So the risk of cancer is very consistent, very persuasive, that it's higher with red meat consumption. Now let's get into some other things that kind of are a little bit unusual. Stroke. Now, why would red meat increase stroke? Well, look at the statistics very clearly on everything on the right side there. So red meat seems to clearly increase the risk of stroke. probably because it increases inflammation in our body, which causes us to be at higher risk of stroke. How about red meat and diabetes? A little bit less that they're all on the right side, but clearly the summary shows that they're positive and an increased risk. Again, why would red meat cause diabetes? Increase in weight, increase in inflammation in our bodies. How about red meat and psychiatric disorders? We have an increase in mania, bipolar depression, major depressive disorders, and schizophrenia. Why would red meat possibly increase psychiatric disorders? Again, seems to increase inflammation in our bodies in general, and that predisposes us to mental disorders. And if you want to look at one of those specific things, mania, which was one of the ones on the previous slide, and we're looking at meat sticks, beef jerky, turkey jerky. The risk of mania with these foods is very substantially increased. This represents a 5-fold increased risk of mania with a high intake of meat sticks. That's very substantial and very dramatic. Well, somebody might say, well, why is red meat harmful? There's a variety of reasons, but here are the key ones. Saturated fats. Red meat is full of saturated fats which are the kind of fats that are very harmful to our body. Not only increase our rate of heart disease, but increase the inflammation in our bodies. Heme iron. We've all heard that you need your red meat to get iron. Well, actually, the type of iron that's in red meat is not a good iron. It is harmful to our bodies. So you do get iron from red meat, but it's the kind of iron that causes us problems and it predisposes us to diseases. The different amino acids in red meat. The amino acids, they're the building blocks to proteins. So those particular building blocks to the proteins of red meat really seem to be kind of harmful to us and to promote disease. Those same amino acids are not present in as great quantity in the proteins of plants. And nitrates, those additives you put in red meat, they increase inflammation and probably are a major cause of all of those side effects, illnesses that I summarized. Okay, well, there you go. Red meat and our health. As you can see, very persuasive that red meat is not good for our health, and really much more harmful than we ever thought, and much more related to different diseases that we never thought would be associated with red meat. Okay, well, let's talk about red meat and our planet's health, because this is an extremely important topic and becoming more important every day as we see climate change all around us. Why is red meat harmful to our planet's health? Many, many reasons, but let me just say the main one, and it's because it causes so much greenhouse gases. Red meat is a huge contributor to greenhouse gas, and let me show you why. Livestock cause the production of greenhouse gas. Really, there's 3 kinds. One is carbon dioxide. That's the greenhouse gas we hear most about, and it's created not only from burning of fossil fuels, but in livestock production. And methane is another one from burps and farts from cows. They contribute a huge amount of methane to our environment, and methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas. And the last one is nitrous oxide, which is caused by the degradation of manure. And those last 2 greenhouse gases, the methane and nitrous oxide, are very, very powerful, very powerful. If CO2, the main greenhouse gas, is 1x, then methane is 86x, 86 times more powerful than CO2. And nitrous oxide from the manure of cows and other animals is almost 300 times more powerful than CO2. So those greenhouse gases are very problematic and responsible for a huge fraction of climate change. This just shows you how much those greenhouse gases, the methane and the nitrous oxide and the carbon dioxide, have all increased dramatically. This shows you from the year zero throughout history. And you can see methane concentration goes up and down, and so does the CO2 and the nitrous oxide. But look at, all of a sudden it spikes, and it's continuing to go up. I'm sure it's much higher since these charts were put together, but you get the general idea of how much, what a dramatic increase there's been in all of these three greenhouse gases. Well, I'm going to talk to you about the group called the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It's the one that produces these headlines that you see periodically. Major climate report describes strong risk of crisis as early as 2040. You'll notice the date on this, 2018. We've had a lot of new evidence since then. The climate crisis is going to become a lot earlier than 2040. In fact, I believe it's here and has affected all of our lives and will only grow worse. But this Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is the most respected body to address climate change issues and the risk of climate change. It's a leading world body assessing the science related to climate change. Scientists from 66 countries, 234 authors and review editors of this, putting all the evidence together. And one of the key considerations they have said in one of their recent reports, one of the simplest and most effective steps to reduce greenhouse gas production is to reduce or eliminate red meat from our diets. In essence, red meat is the low-hanging fruit of fighting climate change. It's something we can do right away. We're not all going to go out and get electric vehicles. We're not all going to change our heating to heat pumps and our water heaters to heat pump water heaters. We're not all going to stop flying. We have to do these fly a little bit of flying for our work. But red meat is the low-hanging fruit. If we wanted to, we could stop producing all this greenhouse gas very, very quickly. Why? Just stop eating red meat. So it's the low-hanging fruit, something we can do, really take action on as individuals and as society very quickly. Let me show you how powerful these greenhouse gases emissions are. This shows you the production of greenhouse gas by food type. And you can see beef is way, way out in front in terms of its production of greenhouse gases. But look at all the other animal products up here: lamb, mutton, dairy beef. Then you get into some prawns, seafood. But animal products, again, cheese, pig, poultry, eggs, rice. Rice is the first one that's even in the plant category here. So you get the idea. The meats, red meat particularly, is way out in terms of its climate change predisposition. Here is each average family's contribution to CO2 production. And you can see that red meat is, again, way out in terms of its contribution to a family's CO2 production or climate change, greenhouse gas production. The good news here, you'll see that oils, sweets, and condiments are pretty low. So you can enjoy those donuts, no problem, from the greenhouse gas perspective. And this, again, shows you another look at greenhouse gas per gram of protein. So we talk about red meat as being, it's such a great source of protein. It is a good source of protein, but it's a very expensive choice in terms of greenhouse gas production. You can see this legumes, beans, which are my favorite source of protein from in terms of my own diet. You can see what a difference it is in terms of how much greenhouse gas comes from the production of it per gram of protein. Okay, well, another issue is red meat and world hunger. I stopped eating red meat after I got out of medical school. And why I was concerned about world hunger. That was my first real reason to stop eating red meat. It wasn't climate change. Climate change really wasn't an issue back then on most of our radar, but world hunger was an issue for me. And so I stopped eating red meat. Why? Because it takes a lot of grain to make red meat. You can see beef on average, 7 pounds of grain to make a pound of red meat. And the range can be 5 to 20 pounds, depending on the quality. Very high quality steaks, choice cuts, could be 20 pounds of grain to make a pound of red meat. Well, that means that's that much less food available for people who are hungry around the world. And there are hundreds of millions of people around the world who are hungry. Okay, that was hunger. Let's get into land use. Red meat and land use. Red meat uses up a huge amount of land. In fact, 4/5, get this, 4/5 of worldwide agricultural land is dedicated to feeding livestock one way or another. That is a huge fraction of our land use. We could put that land to better use if we didn't have red meat or didn't need to have red meat. How about red meat and water use? Well, what is 1 pound of red meat equivalent to in terms of showers, maybe? How many showers? Here you can see this is the number of showers that you could take for 1 pound of red meat if you displaced it. And here's a group put up this bulletin board: save 1,300 gallons of red meat. How? Don't flush your toilet for 6 months. Don't take a shower for 3 months. Or don't eat a burger for lunch. I mean, it just shows you how water intensive red meat is. And as you know, water is becoming more and more of an issue all the time. Okay, you say to me, well, my gosh, will people really change their habits regarding red meat? I mean, it's pretty hard to do. Do you really expect people to change? Well, let me give you another example of something where we had to make a dramatic change, and we did. Smoking. At one point, cigarettes were viewed as healthy way back a long time before we realized they were dangerous. Cigarettes, though, have had a significant fall from grace. How did that happen? Well, we had some initial studies suggesting there was harm, and some more studies came out. And then we had a deluge of studies showing there was harm. And then the Surgeon General came out with a report saying, oh my God, cigarettes are harmful to your health. And then we started putting in restrictions on smoking. And over time, it's had a big impact on things. And we've had dramatic restrictions on smoking. Smoking restrictions on airplanes. How many of us here can remember when you could smoke on airplanes? Really? Airplanes and workplaces and restaurants and bars and stadiums and parks and higher institutions, universities. And now you can't smoke at any of those places, or a lot of them anyway, at least in terms of the universities. But we've made dramatic progress on smoking and passive smoking. And we've even gotten to the point where we put taxation on smoking. Well, could the same thing happen to red meat? Yes, it could. There's studies now suggesting it's harm. They're multiplying. We see more all the time. And we're going to see a deluge of studies in the future showing the harms of red meat. The World Health Organization has listed red meat as a carcinogen. And now I think it's time to put restrictions on red meat, maybe restrictions where institutions not purchasing red meat, workplaces not purchasing red meat, restaurants not purchasing red meat, and maybe even to taxation on our red meat. Here's a group that's comparing red meat, is saying it's the new tobacco. And you might want to say, well, my God, why didn't somebody tell me that red meat is so harmful to my health? Why didn't someone tell me red meat's so harmful to our planet? Well, the reason is there's a lot of vested interests. There's the dairy industry, the meat associations, there's the butchers, there's a whole number of groups that make a lot of money from red meat and want to confuse us about red meat's harm, how harmful it is for us and for our planet. And so there's a lot of confusion that's sown regarding red meat. So my goal today was to influence your beliefs regarding red meat and your habits regarding red meat. I want to influence your beliefs. Hope you'll recognize now that red meat is harmful, much more harmful than expected to your health and to our planet's health. And I secondly wanted to influence your habits, your own dietary habits. I hope you'll change them to a bit, to a slight degree based on the information I've been presenting. Maybe what you purchase at stores or restaurants might change a bit, and your persuasion habits. Again, we all have an opportunity to really influence those around us, our friends, our relatives, families, regarding red meat and the use of red meat and consumption of red meat. And I hope you'll become an advocate for eating less red meat and will encourage others to reduce their red meat consumption. So Physicians Against Red Meat, that's a group I started, and I'm the president of it, very active in it. It's called FARM, Physicians Against Red Meat. And there's the website, farm.org. So that's my presentation. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk with you. I would be delighted to answer any questions you have. And I will stop sharing my screen.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Mike. That was great and a little scary. Eating a lot of red meat in my day. So anybody want to kick us off with some questions?
Okay, I have two.
Sure, go for it, Garrett.
All right. The first one, how effective are statins in reducing the threats of red meat?
They are very, very effective at reducing, if you're taking them properly and get on the proper dose, they are extremely effective at reducing the rate of heart disease, not just from red meat, but from any condition, hyperlipidemia or eating a lot of butter and things like that, that might predispose you to heart disease. Statins will help reduce the risk of those things. And that's been a big success. Statins have been a big success in medicine by reducing the rate of heart disease. However, they won't reduce the rate, statins will probably not reduce the rate of the other things, strokes, diabetes, cancers, and those kind of things. So it's partially helpful, but again, not just for red meat. It just generally lowers your rate of heart disease. Statins do. And I recommend them for people who need them.
Okay, well,
Gary, can I
second question,
insert
yeah.
something on that question before you move on? But what are the side effects of statins? Don't statins also have some side effects? I'm a big proponent of not just going on medication as a pill, but rather trying to change lifestyle. So are there side effects to statins?
There are side effects to statins, and I would not want to scare people too much on that. The side effects are not huge. So if you need a statin, definitely you should take one.
But not to see it as, oh, I can eat whatever I want.
Exactly. It shouldn't be a pill though. I can eat red meat and whatever and not have any problems then. Yeah.
Okay.
Gary, you want to do your second question? And then
okay.
we'll
Thank
to
you.
Elaine after.
Well, do you have any comment about these substitute things for red meat? I trying to think the name of one of them.
Impossible burgers and
Impossible Burger.
Yeah. I would not say that the Impossible Burger is health food. It is processed food. It is way better than red meat for you and our planet, your health and our planet's health, but it's not like eating vegetables or fruits and vegetables or unprocessed food. So if I had the choice, if I wanted to, if I had the choice and had to make a choice of one, I would definitely take the Impossible Burger than the red meat. But again, don't view it as health food. However, I have had Impossible Burgers and I enjoy them occasionally, special occasions kind of thing, and I don't feel bad about it. Like eating dessert, maybe, that's kind of in that category, I'd put it,
Oh, great. Thank you. Elaine, you want to go ahead?
Yes, thanks, Dr. Martin, for that really interesting and educational presentation. I was not aware of all the negative effects of red meat. So I generally avoid red meat. It's kind of a dessert sort of thing once in a while. But I will be trying to show the meat eaters in my in my family the evidence and try to convince them. But my question has to do with kind of an analogy with tobacco. So when people stop smoking cigarettes and they quit after X number of years, they can pretty much regain the health benefits of being a non-smoker. Is there any evidence of that for red meat?
I wouldn't say there's any hard evidence in the same way they studied it with smoking, but I can almost guarantee you it's true. That's the effect. I mean, that effect would be there. I would be totally shocked if you couldn't say this, if it wouldn't turn out that the same thing is true for reducing your consumption of red meat or processed food or anything else. So I think there's good reason for everyone to make the change. It's not too late, and it will be helping your health and the planet's health, any change you make.
Thanks.
Padmini, you want to go ahead?
Yes, hi. Thanks, Dr. Martin, for that presentation. I'm vegetarian, so I already don't eat red meat, but it gives me a lot of information how to influence other people or talk to other people about it. So I really appreciate that. And then one of the things that I noticed, which was interesting, was that even cheese and dairy is reasonably high on that graph that you showed, which produces, greenhouse effects. And that was something that I had not quite thought about that way. And then I have another question. I'll let you respond to that if you have something.
You are exactly right. One can only attack so many things at once, and I don't want to go attack dairy products and cheeses and other things like that. They also are fairly high in terms of greenhouse gas production. I would not say they have the same adverse health consequences the red meat does, but again, I think they're pretty high. And my own,
I do eat dairy, so I mean, I mean, it's just like an observation, good information for me to think about if I can reduce it myself. But my main question was, is there any information or data that you might have to see what is the trend of this red meat consumption going down? Is there things that is already happening, like in terms of because of more awareness about how red meat is bad for the planet, bad for health in general over in the last few years or recent past or like more past, has the consumption been generally going down? Do you have any information on that?
I think there's been a kind of a reduction in the United States of red meat consumption, maybe slower increase of it, but worldwide, I believe it's increasing. And that's because a lot of countries, India, China, other developing countries, people want to eat like the Western people do, and therefore they would want more red meat in their diet. So it's problematic, and it's something our world needs to get off if we hope to solve this climate crisis.
Thank you. So does this, I mean, just sorry, Adam, one more follow-up then.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's interesting to hear that, because worldwide it's going up, so it's not necessarily trending down totally. Do you know if there are other organizations or your organization or other organizations trying to raise this awareness like globally as well outside US?
Yeah, there are groups that do that. We do not. I would like to expand and do it internationally, but haven't been able to do that yet. But there are groups encouraging, I wouldn't say specifically red meat, is kind of like the way Physicians Against Red Meat does, but that they generally encourage plant-based diets for your health and for our planet's health. And my own personal feeling on it is, honest to God, you want to take the best care of your health, go to a plant-based diet. And that doesn't mean, you can never have a piece of red meat or a piece of meat or cheese, but overall, I mean, the best way to eat for health, I believe, and I think the studies are showing, is plant-based.
Right, Bill, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, I have to say that you totally blew my definition of red meat away, because I considered red meat beef.
Yeah,
And you're taking pork and lamb and all the rest of these things.
And I'm sorry about that.
Man, you just really killed me on that one. But no, I appreciate the fact that what you're saying is they're really all very similar. Beef being the worst, but but all of those are really all four-legged creatures. Oh wow. Anyway, rabbits. Oh, come on. So anyway, my question has to do with you pointed out the increased risk. Now, when they were doing studies on cigarettes, they were linking it to actual deaths. Is there any links directly with consumption of red meat and increased deaths?
Oh yeah, overall mortality. Yeah, that's what some of the studies that I was showing was increase in deaths. Not you can't say this meat causes death in this person, but if you look at the studies overall, yeah, absolutely. Very, very powerfully, red meat's very powerfully associated with overall mortality and overall death.
Yeah.
By the way, just let me add to that, why do we talk about, oh, so sorry, about having to tell you about red meat, but a lot of it's just habit. I mean, we've kind of got used to eating red meat. It's something we grew up with, a lot of associations, but nothing inherent about red meat in terms of the fact that it's better tasting. I mean, I don't eat red meat, and I can guarantee you, I enjoy my food as much as anybody on this call. There's just so many good plant-based products to eat. I mean, really, I don't feel like I'm losing out or missing something. So I think if we realize it's just habit and tradition, and it is something we can move away from.
Yeah, we just found a great plant-based sausage, that Italian sausage that we're putting in our pasta sauce, and I was like, great stuff.
Yeah.
So,
They're going to come out with some cultivated meats, which are, they grown in the lab, and chicken, fish, red meats, they certainly won't be harmful to our planet, and I don't think they'll be harmful to our health, and I'm kind of looking forward to trying some of them.
I have a couple of comments if I can jump in here.
Sure, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I put a couple links in the chat that might be of interest. The first one is a paper I saw that discusses the health issues of meat, I think in a very effective way. It basically, what it does is it looks at what is the effect on life expectancy of one serving. So, like a 3-ounce serving of red meat, that's half hour of life expectancy, which is about the equivalent of 2 cigarettes. And there's another paper I saw also. I didn't post it here. I could probably find it, but I think that paper did a study looking at people on a whole food plant-based diet, including fish, versus a standard American diet, and the overall difference in life expectancy was like about 10 years. So that's sort of the order of magnitude of the health effect you're looking at. It's about a decade in life expectancy. And then also you mentioned the IPCC, and I just linked a paper that talks about how the meat industry has sort of, put a muzzle on the IPCC in terms of saying anything about plant-based diets. So I thought you might be interested in those.
I'll tell you one, thank you so much for that. That's very, very helpful. I really appreciate that. It is a bit worrisome that the IPCC is a group of scientists from all different countries, including the fossil fuel producing countries, and they all have to reach a consensus. Well, that consensus ends up being watered down relative to the real risk that's probably out there. So the most relevant body and most important body that we look to for evidence on climate change risk is probably giving us information that's tempered and skewed a little bit towards, oh, there's not a problem. I'm very, very concerned about climate change. And I think people just don't realize how serious it is. And I think we're seeing evidence of it now, all over the world.
Right.
I think, we used to say when Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth came out, we used to say, oh my God, this is going to be a problem for our grandkids. That's too bad. And then maybe 5 years, 10 years later, it's going to be a problem for our kids, So now it's a problem for us. We all are right now being affected by climate change in one way or another. And it's like a battleship moving along. It's hard to stop it, hard to change course. So I'm very concerned about it. So we got to do all we can through diet.
Yeah, we're with you on that. Oh. So Marty, I know you had a question before. You still have it? No? Okay. I had for you one for you. You talked a little bit about advocacy and like talking to our friends and that sort of thing. But you didn't get a chance to really expand on that. I'm curious, is there anything more you could add about like how to talk to people about this? It's such a, it's such a diet is such a personal, cultural thing. Like, do you have any other thoughts on like how to encourage others to start to change?
Well, I think one good way to do it is to talk about if you are, if you've moved away from red meat a bit, then to talk about how much you enjoyed eating plant-based products. People want to move towards things that they recognize as pleasurable. So if you're talking about how much you enjoyed this plant-based product or this plant-based food or plant-based dish, they'll kind of get their curiosity up and say, oh, that sounds really good. I think I'll try that myself, So that's the kind of thing. And also, talking to people about the climate risks really related to, we're all being faced with, people are starting to really recognize, that as I mentioned, that it's here. And so talking about the consequences, climate change consequences of red meat, I think is important and is going to have more of an impact on people now than it might have 5 years ago.
Well, great, thank you. I was also curious what you see. Your organization, like we were talking about earlier, has gotten pretty large. What are you seeing around the politics around red meat? When it comes to encouraging our municipalities, our states to start to try to move away. Like, are you seeing much happening at the political level, or a lot of resistance at the political level?
It's a little like firearm legislation. You get a lot of vested interests, right? Who influence politicians, and so, or any other hot political topic, it's hard to get the politicians to move on it because there's vested interests. This is the same way with smoking. It took a long time to, even before or after the studies were out, took a long time for the changes to be made. Why? Because the cigarette industry was sowing confusion and making people doubt whether there's really was a problem, how big the problem was, do we really need to do anything, blah, blah, blah. Great book, Merchants of Doubt, about how different vested interests have influenced legislation and sown confusion and doubt in people's minds. And cause there to be a long delay between the time that you realize something's problematic and harmful till there's really some action on it.
Yeah, my recollection from the sort of anti-smoking movement, I was kind of young when it was in its heyday, I think, but was that a lot of the political movement came after the lawsuits.
Mhm.
That the lawsuits really led the way.
Yes.
Then the laws and regulations came after. Have you seen anybody going after big meat?
Not yet, not yet. I'll probably, yeah, no, I haven't seen that. They'll probably be after the fossil fuel industry though, that same way. I'll say that. I do see a lot of threats to fossil fuel from litigation.
That'd be nice if they make a little progress there for sure.
Gary, do you have a question?
Just a comment regarding cigarettes. I've read that the major success was restricting cigarette sales to high schoolers. It was relatively few people who did not pick up the habit in high school, picked it up later in life.
Very interesting. Thank you. That's very helpful. And I've heard that taxation also reduces the rate of smoking, but particularly for high school students, right? I mean, they don't have the money to buy cigarettes, so I think that would be a big deterrent for them. And I think it has been.
Yes, if you drive up the cost of McDonald's, the teenagers will have to eat less of it.
Yes.
There's a McDonald's right next to our local high school.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I actually had a question along the same lines. Like, have you all worked on like kind of youth outreach on this front yet? I would think that young people are often a little more open to change.
Yes. Well, yes, we haven't had a chance to do that. We haven't had a chance to do that yet, but we want to. And particularly we want to get schools to stop serving red meat. I mean, seriously, when you think about it, you go to a kindergarten or a grammar school, and they're serving red meat, bacon, sausage, all these things with nitrates and they're proven to be harmful and, cause cancer. And like, oh my God, why are we doing it? It caused mania and schizophrenia. And I mean, oh my God, we're serving nitrates and red meat to these kids. Really, what are we doing to our future generations, So getting the schools to stop serving red meat is I think an important thing.
No, that sounds great. Have you gotten any traction there? Trying to talk to school districts around here maybe would be more receptive.
No, but I'm delighted. I would be delighted to work with anyone who wants to get the schools to stop serving red meat. I think the way to do it is to get the Mothers Club or Parents Club involved and to say, hey, this is not good for our kids. I mean, seriously, think about it. I mean, it's not good for the kids, not good for the world. Like, why are we serving this stuff?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, I've read about the politics around things like the Farm Bill on other issues, and I have a feeling they're similar here.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting political fight. All right. Anybody else got any last follow-up questions you'd like to ask or comments? Anybody? Thanks so much for all the comments and questions already. That's great.
I have a follow-up.
Oh, sure, please.
So, I mean, it was interesting the fact about trying to get school districts or maybe schools to reduce red meat. Have you, I didn't catch if you've tried that before, or if we really, let's say, if I wanted to do something in my child's school district, would that be say, hey, maybe you want to come talk at one of the PTSA meetings, like parents teacher organization meetings or something like that? How would you suggest to go about engaging the school district here?
I am open to any suggestions about how we do it, and I'm happy to participate in any way that I can.
Okay.
But you know, getting some parents together to talk about the issues and problems regarding red meat and why we're serving in, like, why would we serve this at schools, and to try and approach the schools and get them to stop serving. I can guarantee you that if someone wants to have an impact, this would be national headlines, right? If we got a school in your area to stop serving red meat because of the health and climate consequences, that would be national headlines, I believe.
Hmm.
Yeah, I bet you're right.
And so I guess that means that we have not had anybody try, or maybe we have not had success before.
Have not had a chance to try, but I can just see I can just see it's a very effective strategy, and one which would be quite successful and would again gain a lot of attention. I mean, it'd be huge. It'd be huge in terms of attention, and just the fact that it got attention, people would say, "Oh, why are they not serving red meat? I didn't realize it was so harmful." You know what I'm saying? You could, just by getting national attention, you could have a big impact. People reading the story and then say to themselves, "Oh, I didn't realize it was so bad. I think I'll cut down a little bit." I was involved in the passive smoking movement right at the beginning. I did one of the first studies showing that passive smoking was harmful. And I said, you know, if we could show that, then you could, if passive smoking is harmful to people, then it's not right to let people smoke in various places, airplanes, workplaces. And so I did the study, and then I got national attention for it. And you know, you go to a workplace and say, hey, you know, here's the studies showing that smoking is harmful. It's not right to harm one person, and, you know, because somebody's smoking next to them. So you have to put in restrictions. And so we got restrictions put in workplaces. San Francisco was one of the first places to put restrictions in place in workplaces.
Wow.
Why? Say it's not right. You know, you shouldn't do it. And so that kind of thing, again, got a lot of attention. It really started the movement and made a big difference. And people read the stories around the country, and I'm sure they said to themselves, well, I better stop smoking, and probably had a big impact, or I better cut down, or I better not smoke around others. And the same thing would be true if we were able to do it in a school. You'd get national attention and make a big difference.
Oh boy. Gary, you got a little more to go?
I guess two things. Would you like to speak at the Cupertino Rotary, either in person or by Zoom?
Sure, happy to.
Okay, we'll work that details out. Are there organizations that one could support one way or another that promote this sort of diet? You know, vegetarian basically diet or vegan diet.
There's, you know, a number of other organizations. You could always support Physicians Against Red Meat if you want to, but there's a Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine is a good one, that promotes, very effective at promoting good diets around the country. There's a number of vegan groups that are very active and promote vegetarian and vegan diets. So
okay, I'll try to find some, and then maybe I get your email from Adam later.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that'd be terrific.
All right. Well, great. Mike, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. I think we all learned a ton today. Scared us all a little, you know. That's a good thing, I think. You know, expanded our definitions of red meat. Right. I'm right there in the camp with Bill. I was like, red meat is beef, right? And let's go eat some ham. So like, no, this is really great. So thank you very much for coming and talking to us today.
Oh, it's terrific. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. It's good, you know, really good work. And your group is very knowledgeable relative to others, and people on this call are very influential, I'm sure, with their community, in various communities and organizations and things. So let's all get out there and have an impact. And would be happy to work with you all in any way I can to promote this message and to get action done.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Mike.
Thanks so much. Have a
Very
good
much.
rest of your
Thank you very
meeting. Yeah,
Thank you
bye-bye,
very
everyone.
much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Thanks for arranging this, Adam.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
So Deb, should I stop recording here?
Yes, yeah, that's fine.
I can find it.